Let's begin with our Module 1 of our program.
Excellence and performance with world-class standards is a formula for success in education, business, government, and civil society. I would suggest that a critical component of this success is how an organization deals with the future. Even though an organization may be successful and even a benchmark and standard for what it does, there is no guarantee that success will continue. We can see an example of this. Best Buy, the chain of electronics stores, was lauded in the press for its prowess in marketing to consumers, customizing each megastore to the particular needs of the consumers who live near. Now, however, their sales are in a tailspin, and they are struggling to survive as consumers window shop there and then buy what they want more cheaply on Amazon. How can an organization not become a victim of its own success? How can younger organizations leapfrog their competitors and achieve success in a sustainable way? Are successful companies doomed to live only a short while, left behind by their more nimble, smaller competitors? That is likely to be the case if senior management's mindset about the future does not change. For better or worse, management assumes that the future will be the same as the past, or at worst, a linear continuation. The only thinking otherwise is disaster planning, where backups or critical resources and offices are maintained. Even an organization's vision is often a one-sided view of the future, with company success guaranteed in a rosy future. I would suggest that this kind of thinking is one of the limitations of many in management. Instead, I propose a more flexible view, one that incorporates multiple views of the future and the planning that increases an organization's chances of success in the decades to come. This process is called scenario planning. Scenario planning is a way to develop alternative views of the future in a systematic way that allows organizations to plan and react to them. Please note the emphasis on the words systematic, planning, and reaction. By systematic, I mean it is a data-driven process carried out with thought and care, thoroughly looking at many aspects of a scenario. By planning, I mean that significant effort is made into making the scenarios relevant to the organization, and that there is a step-by-step process for accomplishing this. By reaction, I mean that the scenarios are useful to the organization and that they will be used to change the organization in a significant way. In this module, I will talk about the uses of scenarios, the overall development process, technical issues, and the barriers to use. There are several uses to scenario planning. The first is to increase the robustness of a strategic plan. That is, to make sure that a strategic plan is strong enough to withstand a variety of possible futures. Secondly, to develop contingency plans should various scenarios, some of them unpleasant, come about. These contingency plans don't necessarily mean you can tweak your objectives to accommodate a scenario. You shouldn't assume that the capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses that come about from strategic planning will work well. What may be an organizational strength in one scenario may be a weakness in another, and you may need to substantially alter your organization if you anticipate a particular scenario will come about. Thirdly, scenarios can be used as a learning tool to expand the horizons of executives or other high-potential employees. I would be cautious in using just this last approach. It is best used when the organization is already using scenarios to develop their strategic plan. This should not be just an exercise in a training workshop. Attendees at such a workshop would come back to the organization with high expectations to use their newfound knowledge. The organization must be prepared to respond to this new learning by applying it soon after management has been exposed to these techniques. As with all training, learning should be fully integrated into a process of implementation. There are 7 steps in scenario development. The first, form a group to develop and/or work with scenarios developed by consultants. Second, identify the time horizon appropriate to the current situation and environment of the organization. Third, identify trends within the time horizon that influence potential scenarios. Fourth, identify drivers of scenarios and the values of each. Fifth, develop a table or matrix for each driver value. Sixth, develop signposts and indicators that indicate a particular scenario is unfolding. And seventh, hand off the above results to a strategy development group. Membership in the scenario development group is a crucial factor. They should have expertise and knowledge or access to it in strategy, marketing, organizational change, pestle factors, that is, the political, economic, societal, technological, ecological, and legal aspects potentially affecting the organization within the scenario's time frame, industry knowledge, and know well and/or represent an organization's stakeholders. I can't emphasize enough that there should be a diversity of opinions and viewpoints in this group. It cannot be made of the old guard, nor solely those up-and-comers in the organization. If the same people who usually run things are the only members of the scenario development group, they are likely to reflect that the organization has already done and wanted to do. The management of group dynamics is key to this group's success. Whoever facilitates this group must be aware of the politics going on inside the organization and any interpersonal dynamics members might bring to the group. This facilitator must balance the need for a diverse set of opinions with the necessity of reaching consensus at the end of the day. Extensive team building and purpose definition should be done at the beginning of this group's formation. One of the first steps of this group is to identify the time horizon. The time horizon of a scenario defines when it supposedly will happen. If it is made too short, the scenario will look pretty much like the present and will provide little grist for thinking how the future might change. If it is made too long, events may become so unpredictable and removed from the present that the scenario group and the organization will see little relevancy. The just right spot partly depends upon what industrial or service sector the organization is in. Governments and those companies with long-term planning requirements, such as utilities and oil companies, as well as some finance companies, require a time horizon of perhaps 10 to 20 years. Technology, software, and consumer goods companies may require both a long-term and a short-term horizon. Long-term demographic trends may significantly affect them, but the short-term drivers of technological change and fickle consumer tastes affect them as well. With one of our clients, for example, a Saudi investment firm, the time horizon was 15 years. For a large technology company, it was only 5 years. The next step for the group is to identify trends. Trends are the given in each scenario, the factors that affect all of them to one degree or another. Some examples include trends in population growth or decline, some economic factors, and cultural factors. For example, it is a given that China's population will continue to age. Already, the number of workers in prime working years is on the decline. This was and will be caused by China's one-child policy and selective abortion of females. As the number of females is the limiting factor in the number of babies produced, by 2060, China's population will begin to decline, and the world will have 1 billion more Indians. Another given is that a majority of Canadians will be of Asian heritage by 2024. In addition, Middle Eastern oil production will continue to shift away from Europe due to its declining population and away from the United States due to its increasing self-sufficiency. Demand from Asia will continue to power demand, though Chinese shale deposits may affect this. Another set of givens may be when subsidiaries of large companies develop scenarios. The parent company may already have a strategy or objectives in place. These must be factored in as a trend that affects all scenarios developed. Trends, by their nature, are hard and difficult to change. However, some organizations may be able to affect trends over the long term. In this case, they are potential drivers and part of an organizational strategy to change or reverse. For example, governments can alter urbanization policy and so change the population density of selected regions, institute a one-child-per-family policy, or on the other hand, encourage couples to have children with tax incentives. Technology companies may take part in standard settings organizations with an aim to encourage wireless protocols. Let's talk more about drivers. Unlike trends, drivers can take on multiple values, and which way they go is uncertain. They may have major effects on company survival and performance, and have the potential to be affected by the organization's strategy. For governments, potential drivers include social upheaval, population movements, political liberality conservatism, the degree of communications among citizens, etc. Each of these drivers can take on various values: high, medium, and low social upheaval, for example, and high, medium, and low communication among citizens. These values can be placed in a table so that there might be 4 scenarios: high social upheaval, high communication; high social upheaval, low communication; low social upheaval, high communication; and low social upheaval, low communication. With many drivers, as you can see, one could create a large number of scenarios. How many scenarios to develop is a difficult question to answer. All possible combinations of all values of scenarios would create hundreds of possibilities. Choosing among so many of these and estimating the probabilities of them coming about can be a daunting task. There are several ways of accomplishing this. First, many more scenarios than are likely to be used can be fleshed out and tabled for further discussion. Second, drivers can be correlated so that some scenarios can be collapsed to take on just some values. For example, high social upheaval and low communications among citizens might be a scenario that would be less likely and perhaps, just perhaps, be ignored. A third way is to limit the number of scenarios to the number that can be handled by the size of the scenario group. If they only have enough bandwidth or lack of experience in the process to develop 4 scenarios, then just develop 4. After the combination of driver values have been reduced to an acceptable level, the next step is to flesh out the scenarios. Each scenario should have 4 parts: stories and headlines, where articles from a future website or newspaper might describe what is happening in the world should that scenario come about; signposts and indicators, suggesting events and measurements that would indicate a scenario is or will be happening; consequences to the organization; and consequences to stakeholders. In conclusion, scenario planning is a tool that all organizations must now adopt to manage the change needed to achieve world-class performance and leadership in their industry or service sector. I encourage all of you to try it.